April wasn't the best reading month for me. Salutations! Welcome to Loving the Language of Literacy. My name is Sophia Lee, and today I'll be doing my April 2015 reading wrap-up. In the month of April, I only read 10 books, which really just hurts my heart because if you remember, back in January, my wrap-up, I read 16 novels and 2 graphic novels and 1 novella, and that was just the best reading month of all freaking time. But now we have gone into full swing of just life. School from 8 to 3 every day, and then 2 hours of track practice 5 days a week, as well as homework, projects, tests, and of course a social life, which I am beginning to have. It's really weird having plans on a Friday instead of staying inside and introverting. I don't even know what it means anymore. Basically, I didn't make the time because I always say that everyone has time to read. It's just about prioritizing and making time, whether it's staying up the extra half hour or reading versus watching YouTube. So I made the decision to read less in April, and I'm going to just be content with it. Not happy, certainly not happy. I want to read way more. But I will be content with that decision, and hopefully my wrap-up at the end of May will be a lot better. So let's just jump into the books that I did manage to read. First up, we have Poisoned Apples, Poems for You, My Pretty by Christine Hepperman. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars, and I absolutely loved it. It was such a quick read, only around 100 pages of just modern-day feminist retellings of fairy tales. Each page, more or less, was a new poem that was extremely independent and strong, brushing upon topics about eating disorders and social anxiety, sexual orientation, all these pressing social issues of the 21st century in fairy tale form. It was really interesting to see the perspective and as well as the amazing quality of writing while still crafting these really concise but good stories. Next up, I read A Cold Legacy by Megan Shepherd, which is the third and final book in the Madman's Daughter trilogy. My favorite book in the trilogy was the first, then the rating went all the way down to 2 stars for the second book, and then back up to 3.5 for the third. It is a solid 3.5 star series. Nothing was really wowing, but it is very enticing and intriguing writing, as well as an extremely interesting premise. And if you do not know this, the first book, The Madman's Daughter, follows a girl named Juliette Moreau who has to deal with the fact that her father is a mad scientist, and the fallout from his scandals, doing vivisections on animals, and just this world of science and dark achievement that he lives in. I would definitely recommend it if you like steampunk or gothic thrillers. Then I read A Wicked Thing by Brandon Thomas, and I only gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I just disliked this book so freaking much. At times, I felt like I was reading The Red Queen all over again, and I, of course, did not like The Red Queen at all. This is a young adult retelling of Sleeping Beauty, which I was actually looking forward to because with retellings, for me, it can be hit or miss. I was hoping this would be a hit, but it ended up being a miss, and I pretty much hated everything about it, like the characters, the plot, the romance, and just the dynamics between characters were just so annoying, and I would not recommend it unless you are a big fan of Sleeping Beauty retellings. And then we have Anything Could Happen by Will Walton, which comes out at the end of May, and I got this as an ARC from Scholastic. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It was a solid LGBTQ read. That's all I'm going to say about it, basically, because it's about a boy who's questioning life and his sexuality, and it has an interesting premise, and it could have developed into a much different kind of story. My number one complaint was its cliche way of dealing with the fact that he was gay, as well as just the confusion, because there were a lot of skipping around and jumping through events that I didn't quite comprehend as a reader. This might be changed in the finished copy, you never know. But just stay tuned for later this month when I post my book talk. And then we have Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma, which I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars to. And if you do not know, Forbidden deals with quite a taboo subject, and that is incest. I know, quite a shocker, and it has not been done really before in young adult literature or pretty much any other kind of literature. This followed brother and sister Loki and Maya, who are 17 and 16. They have been essentially raising their family since they were little kids because their mom is an alcoholic, kind of drug addict, and isn't quite with it to deal with her family. Because of this, the two of them have this unnaturally strong bond and connection as siblings, and for a while they're just questioning themselves and wondering why they're not really attracted to anyone else until they finally realize that they're actually in love with each other. I personally have never thought that incest could be seen in any other light except for incest, but Tabitha Zuma crafted the story so brilliantly that you actually believe and you're rooting for them and their side because their arguments are so valid. They are just teenagers in love, except for the fact that they are, siblings, which really does not help their story. I was unsatisfied with the ending, which is what I heard from other people as well, because of course with this kind of story and setup, it has to be a tearjerker, but I would most definitely recommend it, and it was my second favorite book of the month. And then we have The Last Time We Say Goodbye by Cynthia Hand. I have been looking forward to reading a Cynthia Hand book for quite a while now. I have heard so much about the Unearthly trilogy. I own the first book. This one was kind of just a more subtle surprise for me as a reader. I didn't really see what it was all about until around the last 100 pages when everything in the story started just to wrap up. And by that point, I thought it was brilliant and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This book follows a girl whose brother commits suicide. It's not so much about the plot or sequence of events, but more about her coming to terms with what happened, and there's a bunch of flashbacks as well as just trying to live in the present and deal with everything that's going on. Her journey through the book is basically just to find closure because she feels responsible and like a terrible sister for letting her brother commit suicide. She just thinks that she could have either seen the warning signs or just something to help him, and I loved the light and the way that Cynthia Hand dealt with such a dark topic. And because after the last 2 books were a bit heavy, I thought I'd pick up a lighter one, and that was The Chapel Wars by Lindsay Levette. And I gave this only 2 out of 5 stars. It was a nice, quick read. It just was not my type. It was extremely cliche. I'm just gonna say it was funny, it was unique in terms of the little quirks it had, but besides that, it was just a standard contemporary rom-com kind of book. And I just wasn't a big fan of the romance or the relationships or the characters, and I really wasn't rooting for what I should have been. This follows a teenage girl who is left her grandfather's chapel in Vegas, and she has to raise enough money to save it because there's a lot of competition going around in Vegas, and her little chapel will not stay there for long if she doesn't do something about it. Then I read My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars to because this was an absolutely astounding, thought-provoking novel. I've heard a lot about this from my English teacher, and that's the reason why I picked this up in the first place, because this follows a girl named Anna who was conceived as well as just raised basically to be spare parts for her older sister Kate, who has a really rare form of leukemia. It brings along such intriguing topics and viewpoints and just perspectives on what it means to be family and what it means to have rights over your own body, because it was Anna and Kate's parents that were forcing her to give white blood cells and just the tissue and everything else she needed until it got to a point where they wanted her to donate a whole kidney to Kate, which would of course put Anna at risk herself. It followed her as she tried to actually sue her parents for this. And what was really interesting was that it wasn't just Anna's story, but it was basically everyone's story. We had several narrators, including the mom, the dad, Anna, Kate, as well as her lawyer and her guardian ad litem, who just were all connected. It was so intriguing to see the story and the viewpoints and how it wasn't just about her, but it was to the core just about what was right and what was wrong, and I loved the way that Jodi Picoult presented these kinds of morals and the lesson involved. Second to last in this month, I read None of the Above by I.W. Gregorio, which was actually one of my most anticipated May releases, and it was a flop for me. I gave it only 3 out of 5 stars. I was so looking forward to reading it just because of its completely unique premise, and it's the very first book of its kind in young adult literature. This follows a girl named Kristen who finds out one day that she is intersex. intersex, which if you don't already know is not the same as transgender, but in fact is when you either look like a male and you have female chromosomes, or you look like a female and have male chromosomes, which was the case with Kristen. The first time ever she has sex, it's extremely painful, and then she goes to the gynecologist and gets it checked out and finds out she's intersex. And unfortunately, this gets leaked to the entire school, which puts everyone into this huge turmoil, and hell breaks loose and a lot of things go down, which is all I'm going to say. It was completely predictable. Besides the minor details of it, I basically predicted and could have written it myself in terms of the plot points that just jump from place to place to place, because you totally guessed where it was going with the subtle romance as well as the relationships and the character development of
I am intersex, I'm going to deal with it and stand on my own and be courageous
kind of thing, which of course has been there, done that, and it could have been presented at least in a different sort of fashion. Lastly this month I read Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews. I reacted to the trailer earlier in April and I absolutely loved it, and first of all I'm going to say that what I said in my trailer talk was completely wrong in pertaining to what the book is actually about. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars and I thought it was a good book. It was definitely written in a male perspective, and when I say that I mean more along the lines of Andrew Smith and a lot less along the lines of John Green. This only has a, I believe, 3.58 average Goodreads rating, and that is mostly because of the foul language, which I would agree there is a lot, but definitely not as much as people complained about. And if anyone's read Andrew Smith, this was nothing in comparison language-wise. I love when things are just told in boy. It's totally masculine, it's totally just lost, dorky, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing in this life, but we're just gonna figure out and try to live through all this. And what I sincerely loved was the way that it was done in screenplay form in some scenes, which really helped with the portrayal of it, and I am certain, especially with the style of the trailer and how it was produced as a movie itself, that the movie will be a pretty faithful adaptation. And if you do not know, this is about a boy named Greg Gaines whose mom one day makes him befriend this girl named Rachel who is dying of leukemia. He and his best friend, aka not really best friend, but kind of business partner, associate person, they try to make a movie for Rachel, and it's just about them. And there's, again, it's one of the books where there's not so much as a plot that's crucial for the story, but it's mostly just about Greg's perspective as a human being and his journey of life. Anyways, tell me in the comments below how your reading month went, what you read, how many books, what was your favorite, if you read any of the ones I did, what you thought of them. Thank you so much for watching. Keep calm, read on, and I'll see you in a video soon. Goodbye!